Hello and welcome to a kind of special episode of the Fully Charged Show. This one is very specifically about the ID.3. Now I'm just going to go through my brief personal history with the ID.3. I was one of the first people outside Volkswagen to drive one. I went down to South Africa with Volkswagen, certainly the first British journalist to drive the ID.3. I was really blown away by it, even though the one I drove was so covered in cloth and carpet. I couldn't see anything of the interior. The exterior was all disguised as well. But it was clearly an amazing car. And now, then I heard a few months later that they were going to do a 77 kilowatt hour one. And I was really impressed because I knew it was quite a small car, and 77 kilowatt hours is, you know, effectively the same as a Tesla Model 3. So this car's just got to go staggering distances. Then I test drove we've done another test drive of the ID.3. I had it for a while with the, I think, not the big battery, the very first one that came out. And my neighbour has one. There's another person down the road who has one. These are popular cars in this country, and I think we're going to see a huge amount of them. There's been a lot of criticism of the software being a little bit glitchy to start with. Not that the actual design of the software is wrong, but that just that it's not working. I've had trouble this morning charging the car from my Zappy charger, because what I've done is fill it. So I luckily have two chargers. I have a dumb socket, which is 7 kilowatts, which is what I've used to top the car up to full. And we've got a Zappy charger, which is amazing, which could charge this car very fast at 11 kilowatts at home, and it didn't work. It kept switching off, it kept not recognizing it. It was just annoying. And you just think, that isn't the Zappy charger. That's the Volkswagen, because I've used so many different cars I have charged on that charger. You know, I'm not like your average driver. There's got to be upwards of 25 different electric cars have all charged without any trouble on that charger. The ID.3 and the ID.4 was a bit sniffy about it. Anyway, so the position I'm in now, I'm going to go for a long drive and then we're going to charge the car when we get to the other end. And I've made this ridiculous route because actually you very rarely drive a long way. Once or twice a year when you go on holiday, and particularly not at the moment during lockdown. But I'm doing a loop, I'm staying in the car, I'm not risking anything. 243 miles range I currently have, which is what, about 300 and something kilometers. We'll put that in the lower third because I can't work it out on my brains. And I'm gonna drive at the moment a little bit further than that, but I've got a feeling I will be able to. The way electric car charging estimates work is they judge it on the previous drive. Well, loads of people have driven this car. It's done 731 miles. It will be a load of journalists and people delivering the car. They won't have driven it maybe as economically as I can. I reckon I can eke that up. But the estimated range of this car is, even on the WLTP database, is higher than 243 miles. And it's not a cold day today. It's currently 13 degrees centigrade. I mean, it's not hot, but it's not like freezing cold like it has been. 13 degrees centigrade. So anyway, that's enough waffle. Let's get on with the drive.
Don't forget our great EV giveaway. Subscribe and enter for the chance to win one of several electrifying prizes, including one of 4 electric cars.
Okay, so I have just stopped to use the facilities at a motorway services in Wiltshire, and I have now driven, let me have a look, 122 miles at an average speed of 41 miles an hour with an average fuel consumption of 3.7 miles to the kilowatt hour, and that isn't changing. That hasn't changed for about the last 80 miles. I have 151 miles range left, so that is 273 miles estimated range, which is about what the EV database suggested, about 280. So this is pretty close to Tesla Model 3 with a similar size battery, usable capacity. So it's very nice to drive. You know, it's got lots and lots of pluses, which I will go into in more detail once I meet up with the crew, which is my next stop. So I stopped and met up with the crew. We fitted the cameras into the car to do the last 47, I think it's 47 miles, 46 miles to the charger we're going to go and use. So we're using a different charger we've not used before. And I mean, this is, you know, what I wanted to do with this car, because we've already reviewed it. It's not like I've never driven the ID.3 before. In fact, I think I can honestly claim I was the first non-Volkswagen employee English-speaking reviewer to get hold of the car. I went to South Africa with Volkswagen a few years ago when they first released their test vehicles. They were testing in South Africa, and drove it there, and it was an amazing experience to be involved that earlier in a car that I knew would be a bit of a game changer, and I'm confident this will be. So far today I have driven, since charge, 166 miles, and I have 118 miles range remaining. And it's been interesting to watch this, particularly. Normally, you know, if you were driving normally like a normal human being, you wouldn't be looking at this, but what I've noticed is every time I do another mile, the range drops by about a mile. They're staying very tightly in tandem, and so it's a fairly accurate range estimator. It's not suddenly dropping. So yeah, so I've done 167 miles so far I've driven, and I've got 160 miles range. So that, in my maths, I'm going to do it now. 167 plus 100, 267, plus 16, 67, 77, 83. That is amazing. So it's stayed, all the calculations I've done, at around 282, 283 miles total range. And I want to talk about range because it's such a constant topic with electric vehicles, and rarely a day goes by where someone on Twitter doesn't say, I can't deal with a car that can do anything less than 600 miles on a charge. There's no doubt in my mind that there will be models of cars coming out in the next 5 years that will do 600, 1,000 miles on a charge. What is the point? Let me explain something to you. So this is driving in a European country, so densely populated, not very big, the UK. I've done the most absurd route to get to where I'm going, to get some more miles in. I've done a really long way round route. It's totally stupid, you know, you would not normally do this, but I wanted to make sure that I drove a good distance in the car. It was full when I left home. I had been driving for 3 hours 55 minutes at an average speed of 44 miles an hour. Now, I've only stopped once. Earlier on I did stop for a comfort break, and I had done about 140 miles. Well, I thought, I just want to get to the thing, I'm not going to do anything. But that is the perfect example, because I could have charged the car then, but if I needed to, but I didn't need to. At that point, I still had over 150 miles of range. Absolutely did not need to charge the car. And the whole experience of using an electric car is very, very different from using a petrol car. And that is the problem, in a way, is how to explain that to people who've never driven them. So the fact that I woke up this morning and the car was full, it was at 100%, which you normally wouldn't do, but because I'm doing this test, I've actually filled it to 100% to see how far it'll go. And I then worked out a route that was way, way longer, because I could see I'm going to get to where this charger is, down in Devon, in the southwest of England. I'm going to get there and it won't even be half empty because it's nowhere near far enough. I need to either drive pretty much to Scotland or right down into Cornwall. But you know, it takes ages. So, you know, normally you wouldn't do it. So for 90% of the time you'll use an electric car. You won't do a journey like this. You don't drive 173 miles on your commute, or to take the kids to school, or to go to the shops. You just don't do that. So actually, having a car with the range and capacity of this car is it's very specific use. Traveling salespeople might need it. People who drive around the country maintaining wind turbines might need that kind of range. But 90% of the time you don't need it. Now, the interesting thing is this car has a 77 kilowatt hour battery pack, and it can do around in the real world 280 to 300 miles on a charge. If I was driving this on a really nice summer's day, it's currently 13 degrees centigrade, I now know from the experience of driving it this far, I would get very close to 300 miles on one charge, so 290. Like at this speed on a motorway. In the winter, much less, 220, 230 miles on a really cold, wet winter's day. It would definitely be less, there's no question. But it's gone way better than I thought. So it's easily comparable with a Tesla Model 3 long range, which is the car I've got. So I can compare these not through statistics or measurements issued by the manufacturers or other people. It's from direct personal experience. I know that on a day like this, if I charge the Tesla to 100%, I would get around 280 miles range in it. And here's an interesting thing. The usable capacity of this car, 77 kilowatt hours. The usable capacity of the Tesla Model 3 long range, 70 kilowatt hours less. So the Tesla does the same distance, possibly even slightly more, but definitely the very, very comparable distance on a 7 kilowatt hour smaller battery pack. Why? Okay, and I also know how much, on a journey like I've done today in the Tesla, I would be over 4 miles to the kilowatt hour. That would be my energy efficiency. In this car, it was way above that for a long time when I was on A roads, but it's now I've been on the motorway for an hour and a half or so. It's gone down to 3.6 miles to the kilowatt hour. Well, why is it using more? Is it aerodynamics? It's not the weight of the car, it's the software. It's something to do with the software, because at the moment I'm using their cruise control, which is beautiful, really, really good. Adaptive cruise control works really well. I've just set it to 70 miles an hour and I stick behind the car in front of me without any problem. And all that stuff is great. It doesn't have any autopilot-y stuff, but this stuff works really well. It's got very good emergency. If someone stops, there was someone who was stopping hard and it braked very well. Now, we're now going into a 50 mile an hour zone. Automatically, I do nothing. It slows down to that. It detects the road signs, and it does do that very well. So this is interesting. So one of our plans was to do the same journey in both cars. So this is the fully charged crew car, the Hyundai Kona, which basically costs about the same, has about the same range, and is similar in size, isn't it, really? And we have one of those. My wife drives it all the time. It's been absolutely amazing, faultlessly, brilliantly wonderful. Brilliant range. So roughly the same sort of thing. 280 miles on a reasonable day, in the middle of winter when it's really cold, 250, in the middle of summer when it's really warm and you don't go too fast, 300. Pretty much similar to that. That costs around upper 30s, early 40s. This particular model is 42,000. I think I prefer that. I feel mean now because I've always loved the Kona, but I think that's nicer. And it looks, and the good thing about it is that is definitely built as an electric car. That you can get a petrol version, you can get a hybrid version, slightly compromised because of that. But I just want to see if it will tell me how fast it's charging now. No. Doesn't tell me anything. Let me have a look in there. This is very high. Oh, so that's putting 87 kilowatts in there now, which is more than 50. But it's not 125, which it can charge at. But as you can see, I'm at 25%. I only managed to get it down to 25%. I could have driven another 100 miles than this. But I'll tell you why I couldn't. I just couldn't be bothered, even for fully charged. I wasn't prepared to make that much sacrifice. So this, yeah, what I'm talking about here is this specific model of the VW ID.3. This is the ID.3 Pro S. This is the one with a 77 kilowatt hour battery. They don't all have that. The other ones come with a smaller battery pack, and they're a lot cheaper. And I think one of my arguments is you probably don't need the really big one. I was raving about it when I first heard about it a couple of years ago. Now I'm thinking, when do I drive 280 miles in one go? I just don't do it. It's very, very, very rare. So, you know, it's like, it's not that necessary. And the people I know who've got the standard range ID.3, it's fine. But the thing is, it's quite a good comparison. So the Kona, the Tesla Model 3, and that, they all have roughly the same battery capacity. They all have roughly the same range, but the Tesla's a lot more expensive. I think that's a fair thing to say. But on, you know, there's a lot of pluses with Teslas, which we don't need to go into now. The 0 to 62 miles an hour, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in this car is 7.9 seconds, which is such a funny thing to do. That is such a boy thing to do, isn't it? It does it in 7.9 seconds, not 8, not 8.1 of a second slower than 8. But if it said 8, it would look like more, it would look slower. And I think the Tesla, my Tesla does it in about 6. So what? Doesn't really matter. The Kona does it in probably about 10. So, you know, they're not performance cars. Things I love about this: front wheel steering, rear wheel drive, really good turning circle, and it feels right to have the rear wheel drive. I think the interior space is somewhat compromised in this, particularly the back seats, with the extra sized battery pack. And clearly it's going to weigh more, but it is pretty damn efficient. It's just a delight to drive. I've now got to drive about 140 miles back home, you know, and all the way down the line, the amount of miles it's done and the amount of miles left have remained at around 285 miles, between 280 and 285. Currently, it would have been 285 if you added what's left and what you've used together. And I think that is super adequate. And look, electric vehicle, okay, diesel electric, but very efficient way of transporting you human beings. That's doing, you know, if you worked out what the kilowatt hours to the miles to the kilowatt hour per person in that, it's kind of be like 200. But it stinks. I can smell diesel. So it does have a diesel engine. When are they going to make them pure electric? Well, to sum up, basically, I'm really impressed with the VW ID.3 Pro S. I mean, if you can afford the lease, fantastic. I mean, if you want to buy one, do it, because you won't be disappointed. It's a brilliant little car, easy to park, easy to drive, super fuel efficient, really long range. What more can you ask? Brilliantly made, and all they've got to do is finesse their software a little bit more. But the actual software in the car works really flawlessly. All really good. So that's it. I mentioned subscribing at the beginning. I'll mention it again now. Subscribe. There's prizes. It's worth doing. Have a look at the Patreon link that's beneath this video. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.